going fishing without a license?
It's one fish, and I'm sick of all the stuff I got to eat.
Hello, this is Paul from Play Magazine, and this is Firewatch. It's a game from Campo Santo, a team that's got members who worked on the first season of The Walking Dead, Mark of the Ninja, among others. Given the quality of the games they've worked on in the past, I was really excited for this game, but I was actually a little bit disappointed by Firewatch. Now, before I get on to precisely why that is, I'll start with what's good about Firewatch, and that is the characters. The game does a really good job introducing you to Henry, which is the protagonist, the character that you play as at the beginning of the game. It sets up with a really strong emotional foundation. Henry is taking a job as a firewatch out in the Wyoming wilderness. He's isolated, alone in the middle of the forest, keeping an eye out for fires. The only contact you have is with your supervisor, who's called Delilah, who will periodically contact you on your walkie-talkie. You can choose how to respond to her, not to respond to her. You can call in about items that you find or just a nice view, those sorts of things. And depending on how you choose to interact with her, that affects your relationship. It doesn't affect the course of the story per se. It's more the tone of your interactions with Delilah. Both the characters are really, really well written, really well drawn and believable. There's something really interesting about their relationship. It's predicated on them having this distance from each other, the fact that they're never actually in contact, never actually get to be in the same room as each other. So there's something really intriguing there. The problem I have with the game is that the story, the events that it focuses on, doesn't really allow that dynamic to shine in the best way. Obviously, I can't go into too much detail without spoiling things for you, but I'll just give you the basic setup, which is that as you start to investigate the area around you, there's some odd things that start to happen, and you start to realise that you might not be alone out in the woods and there might be something a bit weird going on. The way that story's told never really connected with me in a believable way. The explanation for all the events that you get at the end of the story was ridiculous, to be honest, which is a real shame because the characters felt so grounded and real, and then you had this other thing which was working against that. So I really didn't think that was to the benefit of the game. It's quite clear that the story's meant to reflect or relate to the events that you get introduced to at the beginning of the game, what's going on in Henry's life at home before he comes out. But for me, it doesn't really do that. So when you get to the end of the story, you're meant to have this feeling that the events that you've been through have somehow helped Henry work to a resolution. But for me, the story didn't really do that. So you had this strong emotional introduction that gave you the setup. You had a resolution at the end, but the bit in the middle that's supposed to connect those two just wasn't really there. Moving on to something a bit more positive, I like the fact that being as you're set in the wilderness, the game tries to make you feel lost. So it doesn't give you waypoints. Instead, you've got a map and a compass. So you have to kind of orientate yourself. And that sense of feeling lost, connecting with the idea that you're perhaps being watched and you're isolated, that can be quite powerful early on in the game. You do soon realise that there's only a few linear paths that connect each of the key areas though, so that sense of being lost does tend to disappear the further you go on in the game, so that's a bit of a shame. The game looks amazing. It's a really beautiful place to be in. The only thing that's spoiling that really is the frame rate is very inconsistent on PlayStation 4. Hopefully that's something will be corrected in a patch, but at the moment it's so noticeable that it does detract from the experience somewhat. Now, I'm conscious that I've sounded really negative about the game overall, and while I do think there are quite a few things wrong with it, it's partly because I've had such high expectations for the game. I do think that the strength of the characters, the voice acting, the dialogue, does still make it worthwhile. And I think you can see that the team's got some really interesting ideas and there's hints at the game doing some really intriguing things. It's just a shame that it doesn't quite get there, and some of the things it does don't shine quite as brightly as they should do. So be aware that there are technical problems there. Be aware that it might not be the spectacular title so many people seem to hope it would be, but certainly there are good things there.
They're extra worried about a fire jumping the river and burning up to 2 forks.